5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Velocity is cut by 800 feet a second, working more directly against gravity than planned. Reaching over 23,000 miles an hour, it carries to nearly 80,000 miles, 30 times as far as ever before.
There, Sebastian, hello.
Hey, how are you guys? Can you hear me well?
We can hear you very well. The floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you so much. That was a very impressive intro, by the way, very animated. So I'm a designer, artist, bit of a tech entrepreneur, a bit of an activist at the same time. And today I want to talk to you about not design thinking, but how to create designs that can help people to actually think. So we're going to start with my slides here. That's a phrase that I want you guys to remember. So on to the next, first project. This is an image that we all saw and shocked every single one of us. It has been chosen on purpose to start with the idea that a lot of the time a design problem occurs all of a sudden. And we don't really have time to really think about what might be the best way to solve it. Nevertheless, it is in those cases in which we're working against time that it is key to keep a macro view of how things could be solved. I have on the next slide images of the different proposals that immediately a series of the best architectural and design offices around the world started offering as their visions to what could have been the reconstruction of Notre Dame. Now, if you think about it, every single one of these pieces, apart from being questionable within their aesthetic choices, stem from an immediate intention to basically satisfy a personal ego of the architect. Who wouldn't want to associate their name and brand for the rest of eternity to one of the most known pieces of architectural heritage for the world? So naturally, every one of those responses, suddenly it is all about the architectural firm and less about the actual problem. Coming in and seeing the problem, you realize that it no longer makes sense for any more studios to continue to contribute with new aesthetic ideas. And maybe the most logical thing would be to actually question the continuing of proposals that had no point. So what we tried to do as a studio very quickly in 24 hours was to propose an idea that was so absurd, so ridiculous, that would hopefully saturate the public's interest for any more notions of this kind. So as you can see on the next slide, we decided to do something crazy, maybe inspired by Tintin. We've decided to transform the entire Notre Dame into a platform. Please, next slide. Whenever I go like that with my finger, you switch slides, please. So let's go again. Right, so the idea was to transform it into an entirely crazy notion, one up all of the architectural firms and say, hey guys, this no longer makes sense. Let's not continue to try and surpass each other in creativity. Let's maybe think about what we're doing, stop everything, and consider if the $2 billion that have been raised to fix this church should be destined into an aesthetical choice, or maybe we could consider just leaving the space as it is, maybe just securing the roof, making sure everything is okay, and diversifying part of those funds into new jobs for the new generations. So through an image that might be almost funny and almost ridiculous, I think we can still invite the audience to think. Now, in a similar manner, we can do the same thing for more complex problems. In this case, what I have here is a photograph of some of the US soldiers returning from war. And as opposed to most movies in which the US soldiers all board a giant plane that is a military aircraft, most of the soldiers here go and take traditional commercial flights in commercial airports, and their own entire outfits that are designed to camouflage them in combat only make them stand out at the airport. When you pass by and see them, I would see their eyes, and you would notice that these guys had really gone through an enormous amount of suffering. So you start thinking there must be high levels of post-traumatic syndrome amongst all of them. This was a project that was done around 2006. And at the time, there was no public notion, no awareness of the level of trauma that a soldier could pass by. So I started checking all of the data and analyzing everywhere with my team. And we realized that in 2009, the US soldiers had committed suicide at twice the rate that they had been killed by enemy fire. At the time, I was shocked, and I posted these stats on Instagram, I posted them on Facebook. But none of my friends connected. None of them were capable of empathizing. So I realized I needed some sort of a visual that could illustrate this better. So I decided to post it on the real world. And I made one line for every single one of these soldiers that had fallen. It was something that I thought was going to take me maybe an hour, 2 hours. It ended up taking an entire day. Now, after the day, we ended up and this following I'm losing. Yeah, can we switch?
Yes, we have a little problem.
We've got some
We've got
network problems, but
we've got you
okay,
back.
yeah, we're good now. Sorry, perfect. So in this image, what is interesting is that you see in a single visual the description of a series of statistics that are impossible to understand otherwise, now tallied one next to another in a single image. This image was able of going viral. And because it went viral, it ended up on CNN and in another of news outlets. And it actually got real journalists, sociologists, and psychologists to start talking about the subject. So all of a sudden, a very simple image triggered an entire discussion and helped contribute to creating awareness so that we could make reforms that could actually help the soldiers. Now, being from Chile, as you might know, we had General Pinochet in 1973 come in and take power. This was Cold War period. General Pinochet had all the people that were thinking against him, and he has them imprisoned in our national stadium. Chile's national stadium becomes a concentration camp. One by one, the people are called up, they're interrogated, tortured, and some of them are killed. Now, this national stadium continued to be used afterwards for soccer matches and concerts without any cleansing of any kind. And I decided that we needed to make some sort of an emotional change that would allow people to acknowledge our history, but also be able to move onwards from there. So what I did was I rented Chile's national stadium for an entire week for myself. We brought in a giant magnolia tree that was approximately 12 meters in height. And then we planted it in the middle of the stadium so that it could now transform the space and decontextualize it into a park. As you can see, because the walls are so high up in the space, right? Even though it's downtown Santiago, when you walk into this place, which was now a memorial park, you were suddenly in complete silence. And you had the opportunity to sit down in front of that tree, to think, to remember. Now, because this was quite a traumatic experience, I wanted to end in a cathartic, hopeful note. So I managed to convince Chile's all-star soccer team, the national football team, to play a match with the tree in the middle. So we had the team go up, 40,000 people went, and we had a match for charity in which the players played around the tree. What was amazing was that you could see them dribbling around the tree, and people would roar and clap way more than if they scored a goal in one end or another. So it really became a festivity, a celebration in which an entire nation was capable of once again dealing with their history and maybe moving forward from there. Now, today I live in New York since the past 15 years. New York is the city that never sleeps. It is a city in which we all live within a degree of craziness that is almost unbearable. And the only way to impact change, to allow people to actually stop for a few seconds and have a moment of thought, requires stopping, right? And so I figured, okay, Times Square is the most saturated space in all of the planet in terms of contamination, both visual and in sound, and quantities of people. We have more people in Times Square than on the Great Wall of China or the Las Vegas Strip or under the Eiffel Tower. So what if we could grab a lot of the screens there, 50 of those giant screens, transform them from flickering colors into very slow black and white images? And what if we could have a figure yawning again and again and again? And so yawns are contagious. If I start yawning here, I could probably start getting you guys to yawn if I yawn enough. And they're especially contagious if it is a person who we're familiar with or a friend, because our levels of empathy go high. So imagine the entire space surrounding you with yawns, almost as if some sort of benign terrorist organization had taken over the spot and was forcing people underneath to start yawning, start feeling sleepy, and stop thinking of buying more M&Ms or going to the other crazy store or taking more selfies, and maybe going back with their families to their hotel, maybe having a conversation that they hadn't had. And for us, that moment was actually quite beautiful, because we really managed to get, we believe, more and more people to leave the space, and we could only dream of how those yawns could maybe continue, almost as an epidemic, spreading throughout the city, getting everyone to rest a little and have more of a pause. Now, after Times Square, you think, okay, how do we go even more macro? What could we do at an even bigger scale? And I've always been a fan of science and technology, and I've loved hearing the astronauts talk about the overview effect, that effect that you get when you're looking down at Earth from space. And you get to see no longer your little country, but you get to see yourself as part of a bigger thing. And they narrate the camaraderie that happens between astronauts of different nations, in which it is much harder to understand that we're all supposed to be fighting for our own ideals when we're together. Our fate is combined in this little rock that is floating around so precariously. So how could I provide that same image that only the astronauts get to have for the people down here below? Well, what I figured was, what if we could beam directly from a NASA satellite in space real-time footage of the Earth down into a location in the middle of the city? So that's exactly what we did. We basically got a series of cameras to be beaming us data and information, created our own software, our own personal screen that was custom made, had to put a bunch of radars and all kinds of systems to allow the data to be compiled, and then could provide now for all of New York City this moment of pause and introspection. We had it in 2 points. One was in the middle of a small street where people would go towards a commute in the morning or at night, and they would stumble upon this image. And you would stop for 2 seconds and think, okay, this must be video footage. But next to the image, they would see, this is you now, live streamed from space. And you would see their connection. You would see them stopping, going from taking a selfie or a photo to calling someone or staying there for a bit. And it's those moments of pause that, for me, are so key and important. Now, at some scale, there is only so much you can do within size in 1 or 2 physical interventions within the city. Ultimately, the only tool we can continue to scale in is technology, right? And naturally, if we have several billion phones that are available, why not try to incorporate them to change drastically problems that we have today? For me, one of the first issues was the idea that every day in my daily commute from my home to the studio, I would see a poster of a missing child. For months, I just looked at it and was saddened, but that was it. Then one day I took the sign out, I gave it to someone in my team, and I asked them to please scan it. Having that image scanned, I asked them to make me a t-shirt. And so with that t-shirt done, I decided to test it out. I put on a shirt over it because I was a little nervous of carrying around a t-shirt and being the milk carton with a t-shirt that no longer said Nike or Metallica, but said Tatiana missing since so-and-so, age 14. It was quite intensive and strong to be walking around, and I wanted to be able to cover up if necessary. But to my surprise, as I walked through the street, I would get every now and then someone who would come up to me and say, "Sir, sorry, is there a hashtag? May I take a photo? How can I help?" I realized, okay, there's something interesting here. Now, what if we could design a bot that scrapes all of the data and info from the center of missing children, simplifies the amount of information into a perfect poster, sends the poster to a t-shirt making company that allows anyone to be able to log in, choose a t-shirt, and now be able to wear a missing person. So the thing that we did it, we made the software, created everything, and we were quite happy. But then we realized there's going to be a problem here. We can't allow people to just choose which missing person they want to wear. There's an ethical problem. So we thought, okay, maybe you don't get to choose, you get designated a person depending on what location you're in. So if I'm in an area in Brooklyn, the software knows that's where I'm logging from. It designates whoever was the last missing child within Brooklyn in my area and makes me a t-shirt. So suddenly we had the data, we had your location, we had the maps. We figured, well, now we need to make an app. We need to combine all these things. If Uber can find us, and if we can pinpoint where we are in our location, we need to figure out how to help everyone be able to contribute information. So we decided to go on to the next stage, figure out how to make a campaign, and then how to create an app that could allow everyone to now participate, so that the t-shirt would just become now a tool of promotion for this technological piece that we would all start incorporating, that would allow us to all provide information and assume responsibility together of this problem. Now, I'm going to leave you with a final project we're currently on. Maybe this is the biggest thing for the moment that we're working on. During our entire process over the past 20 years, we naturally work with computers from everything from 3D printing sculptures, as you can see in the back, to needing to figure out technical or engineering drawings for a giant installation. And at some point, we started working more and more with augmented reality, understanding that there was something here as a democratic tool that could help a lot. And it was around that time that Snapchat met up with Jeff Koons and decided to place the first geo-located augmented reality piece. And they placed this balloon in Central Park, and they did it without asking anyone permission. And we felt that this was almost as if the mayor of a town had decided to place a sculpture in the town without asking any one of the neighbors if they should have it. So we decided with my team to basically vandalize the balloon dog. And in 24 hours, we created a replica, we created an app, and we tagged it to the exact same geolocation. And we let the press know that now, whenever they went to see the Snapchat balloon dog, they would see the vandalized version in which people weren't as happy. And it was through that process that we decided to take it one step further. And so, since a lot of you are in the tech world, I'm going to pitch. We're currently building a platform that we're calling All. This is All World. What we're basing it on is the following problem. Every single creator, artist today can generate an enormous amount of creative output. Nevertheless, most of them cannot exhibit their work, let alone live from the sales of their work. Many of you that are creators right now in the audience know that. You also might know that 90% of art school graduates doesn't get to make a living from the sales. So the interesting is that at the same time, the audience wants to be able to purchase art, but cannot. It is a similar phenomenon that everyone thought that the actual size of the market of the music industry was only conformed by those who could pay. But the moment that that was taken down to a streaming price, the size of the market suddenly surprisingly grew. If we consider that in every art exhibition, you cannot touch the ER, and our hearing is already augmented, it was set up logically to be able to design for a virtual world. Now, with augmented reality, they're the democrat whatever they want. We have 5G rolling out at the end of this year. We're having 3D scanning mobile apps that will allow anyone to generate a dimensional photograph and an enormous output of content. And then we have the big companies like Google and Apple generating the architectural structures over which to build augmented reality. So we have the perfect technology and setting to build a new art world and a new art market. And so what we want us to do is to be able to provide every single artist and creator an avenue so that they can now sell digital assets. They no longer need to sell a physical sculpture like you might see behind that needs to be created, packaged, insured, shipped, and then needs to pay enormous amounts in real estate, promotion, etc. But to simply allow anyone to create anything and place it anywhere. And at the same time, allow people who are no longer buying cars, who are less and less buying homes, to be able to, together with their music and books and photos, also carry their artworks and to be able to invest in digital assets. Now, if we simply work to a couple of people to be able to live for a year, now could simply get 30,000 people to maybe donate $1. And with that, be able to leave their job in that coffee place and be able to dedicate their lives to creating more. In a similar manner, that's what YouTube did for video. And then all of these assets, we need to place them somewhere. It's necessary to also create the world layer, a world layer that allows every artist to place things wherever they want without permission, without asking to fulfill any requirements, to be able to control their audience, to be able to decide when, how to organize exhibitions, and to allow brands, locations, and constructions with attractive new pop-up experiences that can incentivize all sorts of interactions. Right, so I'm building here with a team what we hope will be a future art market, an art world for everyone to democratically exchange ideas and invite each other to think and invite. These elements are key today because over the next 10 years, due to the exponential nature of technology, at the speed at which it moves, we need to start thinking now because things will happen so fast that we will not be able to react as a society. So every one of you in the audience, as part of a cultured, educated, probably in a better level financially, who is aware of these changes, who understands Moore's law, who understands the compression and speed at which we're going to move, it is your responsibility to figure out how do you not only incorporate design thinking within your projects, but how do you also create designs that can invite people to think? Because we really need to do that right now. That's it for me.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thanks very much for this very inspiring speech. And we'll see you again, I hope, very soon. Thanks for coming
Definitely.
in
It's a pleasure.
from New York. Goodbye.